important to this initiative. And with this, we can close this panel, and I will pass the floor to the organization, and thank you very much.
Many thanks for the organization side. It was a very interesting panel, very fruitful discussion with a very important topic. And I didn't lie in the beginning of this afternoon where I said that we have a very important and interesting speakers and moderators to cover the two different topics for this afternoon. So we can rush for the last activity. Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, we are closing to the end. We move to the closing remarks, which will be performed by Colonel Luis Marques Saraiva, which I can introduce his very short bio. Luis Marques Saraiva is a professor and a research in Lusíada University in Lisbon and in our institute. So it's we are all the time very glad to have Colonel Luis Saraiva among us, and he's also leading one of discipline that we will manage in our institute, the strategic studies. He's a retired colonel of Portuguese Army. He holds a PhD in international relations and a master in international relations and a degree in military science, cavalry and military academy in Portugal. He is also an auditor of the National Defense course from the National Defense Institute and a graduated in the executive program in advanced security study from the George Marshall Center for Security Studies, in Germany. Please, dear Colonel Luis Saraiva, you have the floor. I saw that you are all the time focused on the different topics. You have a very hard task. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, my friend Marco. It's a good pleasure to be here with you. This was very challenging for me, but fortunately, as I would say in a few moments, I had this task. I was very relieved of these tasks from the moderators. First of all, let me thank for the invitation to participate in this important event at the Military University Institute, my institute also. This task of summarizing, as I said, in very brief closing remarks, all the important ideas that we had the pleasure to listen along this day is a very dire one. I will try though, and excuse me in advance for any misunderstanding of what was said during the conference. This conference was also an important opportunity to tackle the matters of security and defense of EU during the Portuguese presidency of the European Union. I had the luck to be in the previous Portuguese presidency of the European Union in Brussels during 2007. And now I've been following closely what has been going on. And I know that this is one of the most important events concerning the security and defense of Europe. So my congratulations to the Institute. Well, we had the perspective of several European citizens from France, Portugal, Romania, Italy, I think. And so we have a large perspective of what is going on from these four of the many countries of the European Union. So the vision is enlarged, I would say. Aligned with the roadmap of the presidency, as it was already said by the commander of the Institute, we had 5 panels, and I will shortly address each of the panels, because as I said previously, the moderators did a very good job on this already, on summarizing what was said. And so I'll try not to be redundant. So I'll take only a few minutes passing through the 5 panels in a telegraphic way. The first panel was titled A More Ambitious EU-NATO Relations with Tangible Results. Colonel Paulino already made a clear summary of the participations, as I said, but I will retain some of the phrases of the thoughts of the main the interventions, Lieutenant General Fontes Ramos addressed the team NATO and the EU in the challenges of the century. And I retained 2 or 3 ideas. We live in a very unstable and dangerous world. Like the Chinese president said, Xi Jinping, prepare for war in a certain environment, of course, but this is what we can expect. And I gave very good, I paid very much attention to what he said concerning a book from Graham Allison, The Thucydides Trap. And in fact, this is one of the main challenges that the international community may expect in the near future, in the next 1 or 2 decades, is the progressive expansion of the power of China and the relative decreasing of power of the United States, and we may have or not this Thucydides trap. Also, Dr. Marco Marsili presented us with a team towards a strategic EU-NATO security partnership in Africa. He also gave us the idea that more than having EU and African Union sitting at the same side of the table, we should go in a little bit more further and have a trilateral partnership with the 3 parts in the same side of the table. And this is, I would say, a great expectation that we can foresee in the near future. Lieutenant Colonel Marco Cruz also answered the question, the strategic compass and the EU strategic autonomy, complementary or independence from NATO. Some ideas, it is difficult to achieve consensus in the EU. Right now, we don't know if EU is going to, the project is going to go more deep, or if with some indicators we are going to somehow abandon, at least some countries are abandoning the idea of the European project. I'm not speaking about the Great Britain, but the other countries that are doing bilateral agreements with Russia and so on, what concerns energy, etc. And so we are not deepening this project. It looks, it is what it looks. The strategic compass together with NATO means stronger capabilities for development, said Lieutenant Colonel Marco Cruz. The strengthening of the rapprochement between NATO and EU values, the respective process of internal cohesion should be addressed, but we know that the ideas are not completely equal in what concerns the plans for the future of NATO and plans for the future of the European Union. The second panel, named the Strong European Defense Economy, was moderated by Lieutenant Colonel Luis Bernardino. He also very well underlined the main ideas of this panel. Let me read some notes briefly. Marco, if I'm going out of time, just please indicate me. I will shut up immediately.
Okay, just keep on.
Okay. Teodora Zechero, I think it's spelled like this, spoke about modern warfare effects against procurement strategies, mainly some ideas. Innovation is required in the area of weapons precision guidance. This is one of the areas where the research in defense may proceed in Europe. Also, she talked about the disruptive technologies for the European strategic autonomy, and this each of these items are, I would say, in the point of view of either European Defence Agency and and all the companies in Europe that deal with defense are very interesting. Artificial intelligence technologies, big data, virtual reality training, deep learning, machines learning, and most of all, human-machine cooperation. It's a very strange concept, but I think the robots are there and we cannot avoid to have to discuss this in the near future. Also, Lieutenant Colonel Pedro Silva Costa has been dedicating his last years researching on this area, so he is very confident referring to the team European space policy disruptive challenge in the domain of security and defense for a more resilient Europe. And so he addressed also the question of the space technology, and the space is a central element in the autonomy and independence of European Union. And we all together have to make a bigger effort to these new dimensions of defense. And in this panel, also Dr. José Borges gave us some very interesting insights on the challenges and opportunities of the European Defence Fund. There is a lack of information in Portugal concerning the EDF, the European Defence Fund, and in fact, it is not disseminating all the information that could be very useful for new structures, new industries to be developed in Portugal. There is some corporativism, I would say, that do not impulsionate new brains to develop new areas of research and industry. And also, he said that armed forces need to be part of the consortium concerning this research and concerning the industry. And we, military forces, are very apart from the most part of this process. The third panel, A More Resilient Europe Prepared to Deal with Complex Emergencies, was moderated by Colonel Mendes Dias, that gave us also a very good summary of the main ideas. I don't want to overlap him. I will refer that Michaela Marinescu talked about the topic future scenarios on European security, and are very well developed. Bogdan Constantin Pagnelli, I think he was the one, because the paper was written by two persons, but he was the one that spoke about us, the team increasing the resilience of European states facing security threats. And Doreen Alingal presented us with the ideas of the influence of COVID-19 in the danger that populism brings to the security environment. Was a very original approach concerning what is European Union defense, and the question in a very political perspective of what are the dangers that the defense of Europe in a general approach has to tackle with. The fourth panel, Strengthening the EU-Africa Partnership on Peace and Security, was moderated by Lieutenant Colonel Cruz, and already made also very good summary of the participations, and I'll go very briefly through them. Lieutenant Colonel Luis Bernardino very enthusiastically spoke about the strategic partnership EU-Africa, a joint vision for a common security. That's his area, and that's why we have a very excited and positive speech concerning what is the prospects for future of the organizations like the Community of Portuguese-speaking countries. Some ideas: Africa and Europe must together develop a joint strategy, and they have also a joint vision. The regional communities have also a role to develop here, an opportunity. And also, Luis also talked about the idea of establishing common concerns, a joint vision between European Union and African Union. The fifth panel, EU Strategy for Maritime Security, also moderated by Commander Elder Fiat Jesus, gave us a very good brief on the contents of the interventions. First of all, Madame le Docteur Mélissa Levaillant, je pense que c'est comment doit prononcer votre nom, peut-être?
Yes,
Levaillant. Okay, presented the team Maritime Security Consequences of Climate Change, Prospects for Cooperation, and she spoke about the climate change, the relationship, bi-unequivocal relationship between climate change and maritime security. She also stated, underlined that those are bi-directional effects, and we cannot analyze one thing without analyzing the effects on the other side of this binomial. It is now recognized that you develop strong thinking on this subject. Concerning the EU climate change there is a roadmap, there is a commitment of the European Union to deal with this, but EU could be a strong actor in maritime security through information exchange, for example, all over the world, and not behaving only as a regional actor. So this was a very good way of becoming a global, as is the wishful thinking of Europe for so long, since the security strategy of 2003, I think, and later from the report of Javier Solana in 2008. Well, Dr. Sonia Ribeiro gave us visions on maritime security, EU and Portuguese perspectives. It's the first time I see Sonia since we had lunch together in Sofia, Bulgaria, some time ago, I think, 1 year or 2 years ago. So it's very good to see you again. Baltic and Mediterranean are central in EU strategy, and but Atlantic and other areas should be also areas of concern, areas of interest of Europe, mainly because some countries in European Union are mainly Atlantic and not so European, let's say, like in the case of Portugal. Portugal is characterized for being a maritime country and not a continental country. And so I think this is also my perspective, not the perspective of Sonia Ribeiro, but we should pay more attention to the capacities that we have and capabilities in the ocean more than we have in Europe. In Europe, we are just one more small country, nothing else than that. Dr. Seabra spoke also very enthusiastically, and I could hardly take some notes on all what he was saying. It was very nice, and he's very deep involved with the area of that is researching. He spoke about the EU maritime security strategy and the Gulf of Guinea. He started with the birth of this European strategy in 2014, and then jumped until what was achieved now since 2014, and he made a very good analysis, and I congratulate him for that. And I think that I finished my notes. Just to finish, I want to thank you all for sharing with us all those thoughts, and I learned a lot along this day. Your thoughts and ideas that very much help to understand the opportunities, but also the main challenges that the European Union has to deal with from now on. And they are a bunch of very strong challenges that we have, but mainly the European Union and the European countries have in this lots of opportunities. Thanks for the organization for this outstanding event. Thank you all for listening to us, and also my students from Lusíada University, thanks for attending this meeting. Thank you very much. I give the floor back to Marco.
Many thanks, Colonel Luis Saraiva. It's really a great pleasure to having you in our conference. It was a very enormous work with a very accurate sum up for all the speakers and moderators. Many thanks for your work. It was extraordinary. Dear audience, we are closing down our activities for today. Many thanks to your participation, for your questions. Thanks to all the moderators, thanks to all the speakers and all the attendees, and thanks to the organization team that was involved since the beginning. It's a long journey till we reach the final remarks and the closing this event. I think we have learned a lot during this day, and I think it's the most important thing we discuss. We have a lot of speakers from different that show us different perspectives, so we have learned a lot. So that's very important things to keep in mind, and it's very important to celebrate not only the Portuguese presidency, but don't forget that the 9th of May we celebrate the Europe Day, and sometimes we miss that. We are Europeans, so we have to also celebrate these days. Before we leave, I just want to say that it's our intention to deliver the entire speakers communication, and we will email you these documents as soon as possible, because most of the speakers are quite busy. So as soon as